a recap of a lot of these games that went down. So I already talked about the result of the Spurs game and the Toronto going against the Raptors. The Spurs upset the Raptors, winning. I'm pulling up the box scores right now. They won 122-99. Obviously, I've covered the Raptors. You guys know how I feel about Scotty Barnes, as well as the direction of this team. I don't really see them going anywhere in the playoffs, nor do I see them making much noise in the play-in. But regardless, the Raptors definitely shouldn't have lost this game, given how bad the Spurs' record is and how bad the team actually is. If Victor Wembanyama doesn't produce ridiculous numbers like he did here. I mean, 10 blocks is insane for a rookie, as I've mentioned in the previous segment. And just a quick look at some of these other games. Right when I said that Philly hasn't responded how I thought they were going to respond, they end up finally winning a very big game against a very competitive team. They recently beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, who just moved up all the way from 6 to 3 in the NBA power rankings. So, huge win for the Sixers. Buddy Hield ended the game with 24 points on 5 of 8 from the 3, as well as 9 for 13 from the field. Kelly Oubre ended with 24 as well on 10 of 14. And Maxey ended with 22 and 9 assists. So, really big win for the Sixers in this one. They definitely needed this win. And Buddy Hield showed how he can remain an efficient three-point shooter. And I'm very surprised that the Pacers didn't utilize him as much as they did. Like, given how quick and fast-paced the Pacers' offense really is, like I'm very surprised that this team didn't utilize Buddy Hield to the best of their ability. But it was a great grab for the 76ers, if you can tell. And, 24 points, he led his team in scoring. So, what more could you ask of Buddy Hield than that? And they ended up getting the win. Cameron Payne has also proven to be a valuable asset in trading for him in the scoring. They traded Patrick Beverley for Cameron Payne. So they replaced a defensive-minded point guard with an offensive-minded point guard. And it definitely makes sense because you're missing a lot of the offense from Joel Embiid. So, with that in mind, getting Cameron Payne, like he had 15 points in this game. So if you could have that consistency from Cameron Payne, I feel like the Sixers are definitely in a much better spot than they would be without those assets, while they wait for Joel Embiid and him to recover. Great win from the Sixers. They all shot very efficiently. They all shot very efficiently, pardon me. And it wasn't like the Cavs were playing bad either. Donovan Mitchell ended the game with 36. Jarrett Allen ended with 21 and 10. Darius Garland ended with 21 and 9. And Evan Mobley ended with 14 and 10. So all of the starters were in double figures in this game. So with that in mind, it doesn't really change my opinion on either team and like how far they're going. Like, to me at least, I don't really think this win for Philly is enough to justify, they're going to be a playoff team and they're going to be fine when Embiid is here. And I don't think that this game is a panic button for the Cavs whatsoever. They only lost by 2 points. Obviously, like, the fact that they lost to a Sixers team without Embiid is not ideal, given how now they're competing to try to make the Western Conference Finals. So, but still, I don't think that now is the time for the Cavs to push the panic button on their roster. They've been on a roll, and these Sixers, they have to show me a lot more wins against a lot of these tough teams before I can officially change my opinion on the trajectory of both teams. I personally, if you guys haven't been following up with my segments, I personally don't think the Sixers are going to make much noise in the playoffs. I think at best they're going to be a first-round team, and at worst they are going to miss the play-in spot entirely. Now, as for the Cavs, I personally think that they're going to be competing, and they have the potential to make it to the Western Conference Finals, assuming they don't get matched up against the New York Knicks. Those are my standings on both of those teams. That's what I think the trajectory of both of those teams are. And this game doesn't change that whatsoever. The Cavs shouldn't worry about this game, and they should just take this into account and move on to next week and try to win it again and try to go on a big win streak again. They're in a very good position, so this loss shouldn't be a big deal to them. It's just a bump in the road, is what I like to call it. And Philly, they play the Heat this Wednesday, so tomorrow. So we'll have to see. If they beat them, then maybe my opinion on Philly will change. But at this rate, I personally don't think that the Sixers will have what it takes to beat the Miami Heat, assuming everybody on the Miami Heat is playing in that game. But that's just me. Another upset that happened was the Pacers losing to the Charlotte Hornets. Now, the Pacers, they recently came off a win against the Knicks. However, there was no Julius Randle or OG Anunoby in the rotation. As you know, they're both down with injuries. So the Knicks were very short-handed in this game, in that previous game. So, but still, the Knicks were a very formidable team. And the fact that the Pacers came off of that win and then go into Charlotte and then lose to Charlotte is very, very concerning. Charlotte is one of the bottom-feeding teams. They're one of the teams that isn't going anywhere this season, and they have to build through the draft. And with the Pacers, with them coming off of a win against the Knicks, it's it doesn't make any sense. How could you go into this game against Charlotte and lose against a worse team? Grant Williams, who the Charlotte Hornets recently acquired in a trade at the trade deadline, he ended the game with 21 points and led the team to that win. He was the best scorer on that team, without a doubt. So this is one of those games that doesn't change the trajectory of either teams, but it does highlight how bad the Pacers' defense actually is. How their defense can let up on any team in this league. And it's really, really bad. And it really shows how, if it were for Tyrese Halliburton and his bad offense this game, the Pacers would have won. Tyrese Halliburton, he shot 5 of 15 and only scored 13 points. And I said previously on my podcast, if you end with more shot attempts than you do points, you're ultimately doing a lot more harm to your team than good, because you're just giving the other team a lot more possessions to score. So I say this all the time about the Pacers. They have to have defense. And this game is a perfect example of what happens if their offense doesn't show up. Their best offensive player in this game was the only player who did not show up. And if he were to hit a few shots, the game would have been closer, and the Pacers probably would have ended up winning this game. But since he didn't, and since the Pacers' defense is lacking, the Charlotte Hornets were able to come out with this win. And you need defense to sort of fall back on it, and that's what the Pacers don't have. So it's putting a lot more pressure on Tyrese Halliburton, who now needs to be able to perform on the offensive end every single night, day in and day out, in order for their team to just have a chance of winning. And if the Pacers had defense, they would have been able to stop Charlotte in a lot of these possessions and prevent Charlotte from taking a huge lead. And I didn't think that the Pacers were going to end up losing this game because their offense has been so consistent. But when their offense isn't consistent, any team can beat them, because they can't even stop a nosebleed at this rate. But I digress. This game is a perfect example of where the Pacers' defense stands and how bad their defense actually is, and the fact that they can just let up any points on any team. They need to get better on that defensive end. It's an absolute must going into the postseason. And in other news, the Bucks hosted the Denver Nuggets, and surprisingly, the Bucks ended up winning this game. So congratulations to Doc Rivers. That's another big win for the Bucks against a very competent Western Conference team. Potential finals matchup, assuming that the Bucks can figure it out and make it all of the way. But it's a huge win. Might have saved Doc Rivers' job. You guys know I'm not a big fan of Doc Rivers or his coaching strategies or anything that he does with any of his teams. Not a big fan of it whatsoever, but still, this is a huge win. Just looking at the box scores right now, Giannis ended the game with 36, 18, and 5. And so he was the only positive, really, for the Bucks offense. Everybody else on the Bucks was sort of mediocre and didn't really take that many shots. I'm going to pull up the box scores here as well just to see the exact shooting percentages that everybody shot. But yeah, so far Giannis was the only real plus to this Bucks team and their offense. Dame went 6 of 15 with 18 points. Has been very, very inconsistent. And Bobby Portis also ended the game going 6 of 14 with 13 points. So very inconsistent on the Bucks end, but it didn't matter because the Nuggets were also a bit inconsistent, and they had the same pattern as the Bucks had. The only player that really showed up to play this game was Jokic. He ended the game with 29, 12, and 8, and everybody else on the court was exceptionally bad. I'm just looking at the box scores right now. Michael Porter Jr. shot 3 for 11 from the field with 11 points. Jamal Murray shot 1 of 5 from the field for 3 points. And Contavious Caldwell-Pope made 1 free throw. So the defense was really good in this game against those players, and they really did a good job in making sure that Jamal Murray did not get going. And that was sort of the difference maker in this game. The fact that the matchups, Giannis was able to outscore Jokic and Dame was able to outscore Jamal. Now, the fact that Dame did not shoot efficiently is a different problem in of itself, but he still was able to outscore Jamal Murray, and that gave them the edge to win the game in the end. Now, obviously, Patrick Beverley coming to this team, producing immediate impact for the Bucks, as they've won 2 games with Patrick Beverley in the lineup. It's absolutely fantastic. They're playing some great basketball with Patrick Beverley. Great pickup from the trade. They desperately needed defense at that guard position because, I say this multiple times, Dame is a terrible defender. And when Dame is not producing consistently on the offensive end, you need defense to fall back on. It is very important, one of the most underlooked aspects of today's game is defense. And the fact that this Bucks team has that now with the players and with Patrick Beverley in the guard position is a very huge plus for them. And again, with this game, the Nuggets, if you're the Nuggets, you just have to play better on the offensive end. You cannot have Jamal Murray scoring 3 points. That simply cannot happen. And Michael Porter Jr., you cannot have Michael Porter Jr. shooting that inefficiently from the field. So really, it's more of a combination of the fact that the Bucks defense was good and the fact that the Denver Nuggets offense wasn't entirely there. Jokic was always there. He always remains consistent, but it's the rest of the team that needs to be consistent. And that was one of the things that made the Nuggets so formidable on their championship run. The fact that they not only had Nikola Jokic's production, but that they also had Jamal Murray's production to go along with it. Jokic and Murray became the first duo to drop a triple-double in the finals for a reason. And they need the consistency not just from Jokic, but also from Jamal Murray. And if you get that from both of those players, the rest of the players will follow suit. Aaron Gordon's job is arguably one of the easiest in the league. Like, not to downplay on what he's doing, because he is a phenomenal athlete and a great player to do the things that he does, but Jokic sets him up for some easy looks given the fact that Jokic gets double teamed a lot in the post. So they have a very, very difficult offense to stop, and they just have to execute with a lot more efficiency. So again, I don't think the Nuggets need to panic. They just have to play better. They just have to be consistent. And they've shown the league that they can be consistent. Now they just have to do it. So, not a big deal. And another game that happened, the Wolves just beat the Clippers in a massive blowout as well. I'm looking at the box scores. 121-100 was the final score. I might have been a little bit wrong about the Timberwolves and their chances of making a deep playoff run. This also might have just been a result of the Clippers choking, however. The Clippers only scored 19 points in the third quarter, and their defense allowed 40 points in the third quarter after being up going into the half. They were up by 5, so not a big lead, but still they had a lead. And they come into the second half doing this. And this isn't the first time that we've seen a Clippers collapse in the third quarter. We've seen it in the bubble where, again, in 2020, I've said this previously in a podcast, in 2020, Game 5 of the second round of the Western Conference Finals, they were up by 18 points. Game 6, they were up by 16 points. And in Game 7, with 4 minutes to go, they were up by 12. And in all of these games, they just consistently lose in the third quarter. Consistently. Like, every single time. They blow it in the third quarter. And the fact that they're doing this now, in the regular season, against a playoff team, a little bit concerning. Because it shows that it shows that they haven't changed whatsoever. And, like, I mean, I might just be me being harsh, like, a little bit too harsh on these Clippers, but it's like, you have to close out, you have to go into the third quarter playing strong, and they just don't, and I don't understand why. And it's like, it's a pattern that this team has. Karl Anthony Towns and Ant, they had a great game, as well as Rudy Gobert. The Clippers, they did not shoot very well from 3, and their star players also didn't shot really poorly in this game. Paul George had 18 points, but was 5 of 16. Kawhi also had 18, but was 8 for 17. Harden went 5 of 13 with 17 points, and Russ shot 3 for 11. So with this in mind, like, the Clippers, they absolutely cannot jump into the second half and perform the way they did. They cannot do that. They have to jump in the second half playing just as strong as they played in the first half. And this is a common theme that the Clippers have all the time. Every time they collapse in the third quarter or in the second half, it's every single time. And they cannot allow this to happen whatsoever. So the Warriors, I'm going to quickly cover the Warriors game. And the Warriors continue their winning streak, beating the Utah Jazz, who previously held a playoff spot. The score was 129-107. Curry ended the game with 25 and 10. Klay Thompson showed up with 26 points. Andrew Wiggins also ended with an efficient 17 points. And Draymond ended with a double-double, almost a triple-double, getting 12, 10, and 8. So far, the Warriors are rolling. They're in the play-in spot. And it doesn't look like they're going to blow up their entire roster. And it doesn't look like they really should blow up their entire roster. And so far, it looks like the Jazz are in a rebuilding phase with the assets that they got. So I don't think they're going to make the play-in anymore. I think Golden State is now going to hold the play-in. And they always have the potential to make a very deep playoff run. Houston also, they beat the Knicks after Brunson hit a game-tying shot that he accidentally fouled a three-point shooter late in the game, and that caused Houston to win by 2 points after he drained 2 free throws. Brunson ended with 27. Precious grabbed 17 boards. DiVincenzo had 23, and Josh Hart ended the game with 17 and 11. The Villanova boys have been rolling. As you guys know, as I said previously with the Knicks, they do not have to worry about anything. They aren't 100% yet. And Bojan also had a great game, scoring 15 points on 7 of 13. So once they add Julius Randle and OG Anunoby into the rotation, the Knicks will be just fine. Nothing to worry about whatsoever. But the rotation has been a little bit weak for the Knicks. But again, once the starters and once the main players come back from injury, this team will be fine. Houston has been playing a lot better in these recent games. So it's not time for the Knicks to hit the panic mode. They just the Rockets, they have very great players. They just have to mesh well together as a team. They have to find that chemistry. And once they do, they could end up being a pretty good team. I don't think the time is now for them to be a good team, but they could. And Another game that happened was Dallas beating the Wizards. Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jordan Poole were having a competition of who could build the biggest house because they shot nothing but bricks. Nothing but bricks in this game. Jordan Poole shot 1 of 12 from the field, and Tim Hardaway shot 2 of 13 from the field. So, obviously, Jordan Poole has been the exact opposite of what the Wizards were expecting from him. They were expecting some great production and a couple of wins, but not the second worst team in the league type of wins. And Jordan Poole hasn't been looking like half the player that he was on Golden State. He is dead last in box plus minus, as I mentioned previously. That means every single time that he's on the court, the other team outscores his team. That is really, really bad. And Kyle Kuzma is ranked second to last in box plus minus as well. Really bad from Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole is definitely not the third Splash Brother. He's not as good as what the media thought he was. And his mentality around the game is really the problem because he thinks he's the best, but in reality, he's not. And Kyrie ended the game with 26. Daniel Gafford has been awesome for the Mavs, getting 16 and 17. And I'm a bit surprised that the Mavs didn't end up blowing out this Wizards team, even with Luka getting a triple-double. He had 26, 15, and 11. So with this in mind, these players are playing great for Dallas. But I think their problem, again, is shockingly a poor defense, because they should have been blowing out these guys in this game. But it wasn't a blowout in this game. The final score, if I pull up the box scores real quick, was 104 to 112 in favor of Dallas. So the game should have been, I feel like the Mavs should have won by a lot more. If they had defense, they definitely would have won by a lot more. But I digress. So far, Gafford has shown to be a very valuable asset to the team. And this Mavs team has a very good chance of making noise in the playoffs. Obviously, when you have Luka Doncic, you always have the chance to make noise in the playoffs. But with that, we are out of time with the second segment on the NBA recap. So go ahead and tune into the third segment where I go and I talk about the MVP ladder, and I'm going to have an image displayed to show you guys just exactly who's top 10 in the MVP rankings and what I think about these MVP rankings. So I will be right back after this break and after I go get a drink.